talking about the psychology of celebration today. You'll see that in this show I'm recommending a lot of celebration for a lot of different reasons. We're going to talk about those. I'm recommending small celebrations and big ones, private ones, public ones. We're going to talk about why they're so good for you and why you forget to do them, and I guess I want to say how that can lead to a chronic or temporary depression, and what you can do about celebrating, even when you don't feel like celebrating. And for those of you that might know me, you certainly know that it's not going to be about pretending. Okay. Let's start off with a prayer. Let's start off with a prayer and get ourselves in the right frame of mind. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for this lovely day. No matter what the day is, no matter where in the world we are, we know that there is something here for us. There are gifts in everything, even if we're not very happy with our lives right now. We open ourselves now in the energy of you, in the energy of love, to show us what we need to do for ourselves, what we need to act on, how we may be closer to you as the living embodiment of you in physical form. We thank you so much for this. We now open ourselves to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to a truth beyond what we think we know right now, that lies in our enlightenment of self. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this. We open ourselves to this, and we celebrate just where we are, just for the next 90 minutes. And we may choose to go on forward with that. And so it is. Amen. I'd like to start this show, and hello Lisa, with a story about a dear client of mine. She's been a client and a friend of mine for many, many years, but she struggled with depression here and there, a lot of OCD. She's been married for many years, but she felt she was in a rut. She felt useless as her children were all grown, and rearing them gave her a lot of self-worth. Through the years, I've given her suggestions on how to make her life more fun. But getting her going and to act on that, thank you, Lisa. Good morning, and I love you too. Getting her to act on her life and on these suggestions that would make her life more fun and get her out of the rut, she was just not able to do. That was the hard part. That was, it was quite a web that we needed to get in there and mess with, to start loosening up the energy so she could enjoy her life. One of the problems was that she was jealous of her husband because I was asking her to be creative and she wouldn't act on her own. Or, by the way, her relationship, she wanted him to do it. That was interesting, wasn't it? She wanted him to do it. In her book, he ought to do it. In other words, she wouldn't for a long time take responsibility for her own happiness. I kept telling her it really didn't matter where the ideas came from, whether they came from her or him or from an outside influence. For me, an idea was just a good idea. The point was to do something creative and fun. So the first part of what I want to put on the table here in terms of getting yourself in a celebratory mindset is to do something. Move on something out of the ordinary. climb out of the rut. And that's how to do it. One of the things that I often do when someone is depressed is I will tell them to get a pen or a pencil and to run a line over and over and over and over and over again in a piece of paper. And then I said, now feel it. And it's a rut. It's because you've done the same thing over and over and over again. We have to do something new. You have to do something different. She was very afraid of the new at one time. Well, not anymore. Things have been shifting for her. And this weekend was a big opening. She and her husband visit a high school friend of hers every year. They always enjoy it. But this year, she got a wild hare to investigate the area in which her friend lived and what it had to offer. She found a glass making class that they all could participate in. So she, her friend, and her husband went to this glass making class. It certainly was wild hare. And she reported this weekend on her last week that it was a marvelous time. And even more importantly, this experience opened a desire for more in her and in her husband. So all of a sudden, the husband that she said wasn't contributing has whirls of ideas because it felt so good to do something and learn something together that they have a desire for more. They are honestly full of ideas about what to do, how to expand their lives and make them happier. If they've really taken root now, and we heard a lot of those stories, they're coming up with all sorts of fun things to do and directions for their lives that they haven't thought of before. Now, her story struck me on so many levels. I also have an Atlanta number, and I will go to that number in just a minute. I do so hope it is a clear day today where I am. Sometimes our speed suffers on the computer, so I hope I can bring you in. I'm just going to finish the story, and then I'm going to go right to our caller and see if I can bring them in. But what I wanted to say to you is her story struck me on a lot of levels. They all have to do with celebration. First of all, I was knowing that I was doing a show on celebration, right? And she had, in this one decision, decided to celebrate life. So this was a good story to start with today, but the elements within her story that were so powerful deserve to be talked about. Number one, what I want to put on the table, because this has everything to do with you, particularly if you're struggling in some way, these have to do with you, the powerful elements of the story I just told. She, number one, explored. She moved to, second thing, on her exploration. And she learned something she didn't know. And this always enriches us. Glass blowing could be something else for you. She tried something new. That's different. It's not just learning something on a deeper level, it's actually trying something new. Because she was afraid of the new. This certainly broke an old pattern for her, didn't it? Oops, I just seem to have lost Blog Talk Radio. Nope. Let's try that. Nope. There it is. She tried something new. We are oftentimes afraid of the new. We've got to learn not to be, because new is just change and growth and wonderful opportunity. Well, I don't know what's going on here, but all sorts of things are cropping up on my computer. There we are. All right. The next thing is she experienced the new with a partner and a friend, which opens an intimacy between people. I mean, we have to expand our idea of intimacy beyond sex, right? Intimacy is when you experience someone mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. You experience something with someone that you haven't experienced with other people. She certainly hadn't experienced that with me. We have our own intimacy, but not that. So that was quite wonderful. It makes you more intimate, gives you a deeper connection to people. And number 4, or is this 5? I don't know. She took the time and energy after the experience to pat herself on the back, first of all, for doing it and breaking old patterns. Second of all, for enjoying it. Third, she let herself so feel the experience. She wanted more. So she gave herself time with the experience, you see? She celebrated her awareness and the time and energy that she has invested through the years to break old patterns. She celebrated her awareness and how she has come to know more. And she actually found in the story the key to happiness. Here it is. Moving mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Yeah, that's the first building block to any of this. She was the one, after all, not her husband, to act. And she created change. In other words, she became responsible for creating her own happiness. This gave other people the opportunity to be happy and more connected to her. It was so joyful that everyone benefited and everybody wanted more. So they started coming up with their own ideas of things to do. Now, in my belief system, that's God in action. That's potential. That's the story. I have many places to go with this subject. But let's see if we can bring in our caller. Hi, this is a 770 exchange that I'm talking to. This is Martha. Are you there? Hello?
I'm here.
Yes? Hello?
Hello? Yes.
Yes, to whom am I speaking? What's your first name?
Shanita.
Shanita? Did I pronounce that right? Well,
yeah.
Hello, Shanita. I'm so glad to have you live and on the air with me. This is wonderful. And I'm so glad that sometimes we are blocked from bringing people in because of the technology. I'm thrilled you got through today. Tell me about yourself and why you called into a show like this.
Well, I've been going through a lot of changes, and I was married for 13 years, and I guess the marriage was, I can relate to what you were talking about because when I was married, I really wasn't myself. I was doing things to make him happy instead of making myself happy first. So
yeah.
Now I'm at a point in my life where myself comes first.
You know, Shanita, that's important. We people please too much. I think that women are trained to people please, quite frankly. I do think it's I don't mean to say it is all gender. By all means it is not. But we learn that we learn to give ourselves up along the way. Men do this too, but in a different way. So I'm awfully glad to hear you saying that. So, you know, I think it's also important to realize, and I want to put on the table, there is a difference between putting yourself first in the ego child's mind and in the ego and being selfish with it. And if that wasn't there, and by the way, we all are in that when we start out, but when you cross the threshold into the arena of the highest self in love, you find that's just the right thing to do. All of a sudden, our motivations change. I mean, you cannot love another to the capability of your potential until you make your peace with and love yourself. So you're giving me the opportunity by that statement to put that on the table for other people. So thank you so much for that. What else is going on with you, Shanita?
Well, I don't know if I can ask a question or...
Of course you can.
Okay. Well, I met a woman about 7 months ago, and we began a friendship, and I really do love her, and I know it's a deeper connection, and I tend to think a lot, so I guess at times I wonder, like, what is the connection between us? Because I know it's something deeper.
Mm-hmm. Are you, forgive me for, I try not to be too personal on this show, but it sounds like you might want something more than there is on the table, than the friendship.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. All right.
Yes.
Now, Shanita, here I go. I believe this woman is a dear friend to you. I believe that you are enormously lonely, and there are some things to get straight within you that have to do actually with your dad, is what they're saying to me. It is a poor choice to make any decision out of issues. This could be a wonderful friendship for life for you, but I don't think she has those intentions of it being more. What I feel very strongly about for you is that you must get straight with the past so you know authentically who you are, whether you are whatever your sexuality is, because right now your issues are confusing it, and whether or not you want a relationship with a woman or a man will be revealed once you get past these issues and we see what your choice clearly is, and that it is not made on loneliness, on wanting someone, on connecting with the mother that you had a different relationship, and as difficult as it might have been, a safer relationship than with the father. We've got to get some of that out of the way because it's influencing you, and it's influencing you against whatever nature that you have and you choose for your life. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot, darling, because I know that I'm not giving you necessarily an answer you want. I feel very strongly when I work with people. I feel very strongly that my job is not to influence them in terms of life choices, but to make sure they're making their choices out of a pure choice and not influences from the past. You know, if we are the spiritual being in physical form, and if in consciousness really this is just about the moment and creating your life right now, then we've got to get off all those old influences that have us reach for something that isn't in our best interest. Now, I'm not saying this isn't in your best interest. I'm not talking about a sexuality here. I'm talking about this isn't the person. This is a really good friend to you. And she could be Okay. I started to say she could be a good lifelong friend. I don't feel that. I don't know why. I think geographically there's going to be something ultimately in years to come that might separate you all, but you're going to have more in your life by then. So this is a wonderful, wonderful friendship. Let that be that. Explore that. And don't get it confused in loneliness. That's all we're saying right now about this. We want you very clear. Now, for you to tune into a show like this, Shanita, you've got to understand that I believe that everybody knows everything anyway. So I'm thinking that you just, because you tuned into a consciousness show, what you really are trying to do is to figure out yourself better. And I think that's the most commendable thing in the world, because underneath these old influences from the past, that is our child's mind figuring out ourselves, our world, our God, our parents, our families, our everything, according to appearances, there is a much bigger part of you that is your love-based self, which is all God, that is telling you to explore yourself a little more. So I'm trying to appeal to that part of you, that right now in your life, it is not about filling the partnership need. It is about knowing yourself so that one day you will be a good partner for an appropriate partnership. And that's where you need to put your focus right now. You understand?
Okay.
It is on
Yes.
knowing you, not on reaching out for partnership. It is on knowing you and figuring out who you are. Now, the reason that I say things like this to you is that I see a lot of people who, in my practice, who are sexual identity confused. And I'm thinking about one dear, well, gosh, all of a sudden I said I'm thinking about one. I'm thinking about dozens, as a matter of fact, through the 40 years of work in one way or another. I'm thinking about several women and several men who got into partnership with a same-sex partner and found out they were heterosexual. I have as many people who got into a heterosexual relationship without knowing themselves, and they found out that their preference was to have a same-sex partner. So this is a question of knowing oneself, of revealing the authentic choices in you beyond influences from the past. That's what this is about. Not choosing a man or a woman. That's not the choice here. You see? And that's the part.
See, we have already been intimate.
Okay, you have already been intimate. I don't think she's going to continue this. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I tuned in. I thought, this is not going to stay what you think it is. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, enjoy it while it lasts and learn something from it. And I will say right now that you absolutely must know yourself. You absolutely must. It's the key to everything. And you don't right now. And she matches you in this, is what they're saying. The not knowing of the self. And that's why this is not going to work ultimately. Now, can you make it work if both of you all decide to really know yourself and go for it? Anything can happen. But right now, everybody is validating everybody else's reality. And that reality needs some work. Because the reality isn't real. I'm sorry, Shanita, if I am saying things that you don't want to hear. Nevertheless, I say enjoy your life. I just say work on yourself. This isn't about a man-woman thing. This is about you and you. You don't have a relationship to you. You understand? And this people-pleasing that you talked about is still going on. It's still going on. It's just taking a different form. Darling, I do try to be the bearer of positive news because everyone can change. Everyone can grow. It's a constant evolvement. So I don't like telling you what I feel here, but, something's got to give. Somebody's got to grow. Somebody's got to evolve. It's nice if two people do that. Then a marriage certainly deepens and grows and you find your unloving pockets. But it really can't be based on something that isn't real. And be happy and last. And where's the reality in you? Where's the reality in her? You all have to get to it. Because right now, you all are validating your fear. You're validating that for each other. You're saying it's going to be okay. That feels real good when you're fearful, doesn't it? And you feel like somebody really, really understands you and knows you. But the very thing that you all are validating each other on is fear-based. That is not a great, sustainable quality to have in a relationship. So, what I say to you, what I say to her, is you've got to know yourself. You got to know yourself. Because I think a lot of people, homosexual and heterosexual, make poor choices in partnerships because they don't know themselves. Isn't about the sexuality, it certainly is about knowing oneself. Do you have any other questions, Shanita?
No, I don't.
Okay, darling. Well, I say I have a suggestion to you, and that is, I think that it isn't about a partnership or not a partnership. I think it's about your doing some work on yourself, and I'd find someone who can really take you into some conscious experiences and get you over your past, and then let's see where you are. If two people are putting in a stew things from the past, the stew just isn't very good, because ultimately, how long have you all been intimate, may I ask? Has it just been a few months?
About 7 months now.
About 7 months. The fantasy of things will wear off. The fantasy will go. Fantasy is its own reward. So we want this to be rooted in something real, not how fearful one is. So it becomes very important for you to now start trying to make yourself happy. Certainly that's wonderful. If you're trying to make yourself happy with her, that's great. But making yourself happy goes far beyond a relationship. It is coming into relationship with yourself for the first time. That's what's missing. That's what you need to do. And you need to take your eye off the relationship and what is good or bad or fanciful or whatever about what's going on right now, and work on you. Then something quite wonderful goes into the pot of stew that you're making called the relationship. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Darling, thank you for calling in. I'd love to hear from you again and how things are working out for you. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, darling. You take care of your sweet self.
Piggy.
I'm so sorry. I can only pick up the energies that are on the table right now. All right. Let's go back to our subject. I think action is such an important thing to take. Shanita, when we talk about action, I'm talking about, I hope you will take the action to start with some sort of challenging teacher, some sort of challenging guide or therapist or minister, something challenging to you that will challenge what you believe, that will help you move the old energies out. Because movement here, taking action, is a big part of making yourself happy. That's why I was so proud of my client who finally took action. Now, what I want to put on the table is the energy of God for all of us is abstract until we, the humans, put the energy of God in us into action. This is our greatest contribution. God must work through us. Now, here's the thing. There are two parts of us, and this is the confusing part about God to most people. God is everything. God is our fear-based self, our ego, child's mind self. All these are the same words. It's fear-based. And it sees the lack of everything. There's a futility about the self. It's still God, but it's in the lower vibrations of God. And we all start out there as children, no matter how fine our childhood was. We form opinions about everything based on the childish appearances of things, because our child's mind is interpreting those things. Now, there's another part to God, of course, which is why you listen to a show like this. It is the love-based, ascended energies of God that are your potential. This is all love-based. It is beyond these appearances. It's truth, more truth. And it's your truth, not mine. I'm just putting my truth on the table for you. But I do know that these two parts of you exist, and that our journey to consciousness and to enlightenment, which is a show like this, what a show like this is about, goes from the fear-based self to the love-based self, which is all God. You know what? And I see another caller. I'll get to you in just a second. Yeah, I think this is why we talk about light when we talk about God. If you'll think of colors like black, black repels light, doesn't it? That's why it's black. Think of this in terms of the child's mind that resists and repels and is oppositional to a lot of things and is afraid to change. It's all a fear-based experience. But think of white light now, which is often associated with spirituality. White light is all colors. And let me tell you, dears, that you are everything that is God, the highs and the lows. That's why we can't get to consciousness and to more enlightenment when we reject ourselves and we don't know ourselves and we say we don't accept parts of us. We have to get straight with all of us, which is what consciousness studies do. So then we can make choices beyond the old influences of our past. And that's when we have huge contributions to make to our families, to our worlds, to our own lives, out of why we are here and put on earth, which is the potential that we have the opportunity to achieve some degree of. let's go now to our next caller. This is, hang on just a minute, this is a 302 exchange. To whom am I speaking?
Hi, my name is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. How are you? I'm Martha. It's nice to talk with you. Jeff, where is 302? Is that Florida?
Well, 302 is a Delaware number, but I'm actually in Oregon at the moment.
Oh, isn't that the most beautiful state?
It is nice. It is very
Oregon.
lovely. I'm in far eastern Oregon, right on the Oregon-Idaho border.
Oh, I bet that's
it's very
beautiful.
pretty out in this part of the state.
That's a part of Oregon I have not been to. I think that our westernmost point was probably Hood River and what's the other, Crater Lake, which is certainly south of you. But man, I love Oregon. It's a beautiful place to be. What can I do for you today, Jeff?
It's very pretty. Well, actually, to be honest, I'm not really sure. A friend suggested that I call. Actually, today is my birthday, but I've been. That's irrelevant. I've been having kind of a, I don't know, soul searching a little bit. You know, we've had some conversations recently about, our relationship patterns throughout our adult lives. And, one thing that I have come to recognize about my own is that, when I'm not in a relationship, when I'm not partnered up, I have a very strong and compelling drive to be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it occupies the majority of my thoughts, my actions, most of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the things that I have found is when I am in a relationship, then all of a sudden, all of that time and mental energy gets freed up, and I become incredibly productive.
Mm-hmm.
Like just ridiculously productive.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm just like sharing.
I'm so glad you did. And Jeff, hasn't the world changed? And for the better, in the respect that I'm just about to mention. You are one of the new men, the men with consciousness really opening. This is, that you share this kind of thing is a big, brave, marvelous thing. Certainly the era I grew up in, which was the 50s, men had to be the strong silent types. They didn't share their vulnerability. But I'm going to tell you, we're all such better partners being vulnerable like this. It's a powerful thing, and dear, you are to be commended for this. And by the way, happy birthday. I think it has everything to do with today because we're talking about celebration, and I hope that we can shed some light and give you some information. Here's what's interesting. Sometimes the most powerful times in my life have been when someone told me the truth, and I might have resented it or pushed it away to begin with, but when I look back on those times, I eventually acted on them and they became very powerful. Now, certainly that's not to say that I have any intention of doing anything but just saying what Spirit, I feel Spirit is saying to me. I think one of the problems here is that you have never gotten to the place where you feel safe within yourself. I think that's the problem, because I think there is an old pattern of dependence on the other instead of on God within you. I think, by the way, Jeff, you're right in keeping with the whole world right now, because I think the whole world is doing that. We think that we have to have a company behind us, or a church behind us, or or the family behind us, or a partner behind us, or something, instead of realizing really we came into this life alone, we will die alone. This is about us finding the level where we are at peace with ourselves. We do that by leaving the place that we are energetically and going down deeper into our experience of self, and finding that not only are we perfectly wonderful people, but God lives within us. And if God indeed lives within us, and it feels to me like that you've got a leg in the fear-based experience of God and a leg in the higher self experience of God, and you kind of toggle back and forth between the two. Clearly, I feel you're a very spiritual person, and you're going in this direction, and you're beginning to look at these marvelous patterns of dependence. So when you're a kid and something frightens you, we very much depend on the other. It's usually a parent, of course, and that experience is still going on with you. There's a level of fear we need to get that's kind of blocking you from going down there and finding out who you really are, and knowing that God is all you are and everything is good and there's nothing that can hurt you but the past repeating itself. That's literally as easy as it is. Of course, it's not easy to live by that, because it's a process in the realization of that. But those are the two things that immediately strike me, that you haven't found out, because you're on a certain level energetically in you of interpretation. We've got to resolve some of that so you can go down and find that God, the ascended God, is all you are, as well as the egoic experience, and that you have good choices, that you create your own life. There's nothing outside of you that's scary. It's all inside of all of us, by the way. and that God is right there, and that you're going to be all right with everything, you know? So I think there's a safety issue that must be addressed. The safety that is intrinsically yours by the nature of your experience as who you are in God. And I do think that we've got to look at the old pattern of dependence on the other, whoever the other is. In this case, you're talking about a partner. I'm sorry about the dog barking. This is just sometimes what happens. I'm going to see if I can move this around a little bit so you don't hear it.
Dogs will sometimes do.
As dogs will do.
Yeah.
The dog always has an opinion about everything. We have a lot of squirrels where I am right now, and the squirrels just drive him crazy. My husband will get him in a few minutes, I'm sure. So I honestly think, Jeff, that those are the two problems, you know. Whatever was scary in your life was fixed by the other when you were a kid, and you're just still fixated. All the fixation is psychologically is energy that's stuck in the past around something, or around a time, or an event, or to someone. And believe it or not, it's not gender related. It's easy to say, oh, your mother was very good, your dad was kind of scary, and I don't know whether that was true or not. It's not necessarily gender related, but some other that you've now attached to a partner in your home, you perceived more as a savior, somebody that made it all right, someone who didn't, someone who gave you the initiative to do, who believed in you totally. And now if you don't have that, you find that all-consuming so that you can find that again. But you can't repeat the past, darling. You just can't repeat the past. This might be one of the reasons why we have to keep going from one person to the other. The answers are inside of you, Jeff. They always have been. They always will be. And you'll be a much stronger partner if you can find that now and bring that to the relationship, and your partner can too. And then, my gosh, you've got two strong, whole individuals that know they create their own lives and are responsible for their own happiness. How much happier can you be, you see, coming from that kind of fullness?
Okay.
These are two people that add their potential to a relationship.
But,
Yes, darling, what were you going to say?
right. No, that I'm just taking in, everything that you have to say. 'Cause, like I said, I'm not really sure what I hope or expect to get out of this. It just, I've just begun exploring all of these thoughts and feelings and this whole pattern in my life.
All we're doing is talking, and we're putting some ideas out there, darling. There is no force to act. And I do suggest, and I don't just say this to you because I don't feel this, but I'm always aware there's a radio audience listening too. And I say this cannot be forced. And who forces us? Sometimes us. And all of us as human beings resist force. We've got to get to the point where we know it's the right thing to do, and we're called to explore our safety that is within us. We're called to explore our version of God that becomes, by the way, very trustworthy when our ideas of it grow up. You understand? If we carry the child's idea of... Okay, well, let me put it a different way. If we carry the child's idea of God, a God that punishes as well as loves, a God that wants us to be good little boys and girls, that God does not serve 2018 and some of the problems we have now. We have to have a movable God, a God that is certainly unmovable in its energy and in its integrity, but our minds have to change about God, and we have to find the spirituality within us that allows God to be present and applicable right now in every moment today. When we buy dogma as our be-all and end-all, sometimes dogma by its nature is stagnant and it doesn't travel with us. So when you're doing consciousness studies, we have to realize that we have to get some of these old ideas about ourselves, about God out, let them change, let them grow. And, the interesting thing to me always is the people that are conscious, the people that are enlightened usually see the same things. They have certain things in common, that God is all there is, that they're part of this marvelous system, that energy works a certain way every time. They have great gratitude. There isn't an idea over here and an idea over there that is opposed, like it is when we create these dogmas in ego, you see? Now, I'm not panning any belief system. Do not think for a moment I'm panning any belief system, because I do believe that our belief systems are ladders, are steps that we take along the way to whatever we are going to know ultimately. And what we are going to know ultimately depends on where we stop or where we don't stop. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does.
Good. So I think there are some old fear-based misconceptions that you have about yourself. And I don't think you know that all the answers are within you. And they are. Because God's all you are. And we just have to get to the place where we're open to knowing what that answer is. And if we don't know, I just had this discussion with people yesterday, if we don't know what the answer is, then we know someone who does, or we can go on the search for it. I was discussing with my advanced class this very subtle thing here, which was, and we're off the subject of you, but I think this is an important teaching point. One of my clients, my students, said, I have gotten so that I can, through this work, tolerate frustration a lot more. And I found myself sitting at the computer actually working through a problem that I had with it. And I said, that's absolutely wonderful. And I put on the table that all I know to do, Jeff, is to turn the computer off and on, like my husband told me. And I could sit here hammering at the technology all day long and might not find the answer, but my husband could probably find it in an hour. And that all day long that I might put into the pot here takes me away from talking to people, working with people, and helping people that I do for 8 hours a day. So we have to be realistic about where our limitations are and what we need to do about them and where our time is better spent. This is the mature mind. I'm not saying that I have it, but I am saying that in this respect I certainly do, because I'm always weighing, is it better for me to sit here and hash that out, or is it better for me to, if I can't fix a problem in an hour, it's better to hand it off to somebody who can, so I can take what I do well and give that to my clients. You understand? So we all have to know what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm talking to you, Jeff, you don't know what you can do. You've never reached that level of your safety and security and knowledge that all of this is inside you. You've got to open to that, because you've got some misperceptions about yourself that's making you dependent on the other, because there's a basic belief that the other will protect you, that you'll get in trouble if you don't have the other, that the other knows more than you, and some other things which are, by the way, blatant lies you're telling yourself, and you're telling them in the most insidious way, my darling, because these things are subtle and a lot of times subconscious in you. You're observing marvelously the behavior that results from these false beliefs. But these false beliefs are in you, and by the way, well-founded. They were what the child thought about the world, and the child must understand how its world works for it to survive. A child that doesn't create these issues has a really hard time surviving. So congratulations. I happen to think your issues are a good thing, but they shouldn't travel with you through life. They're there to be accepted and resolved, and then for you to go on and believe something quite different about yourself. You see?
I think so.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you for that insight.
I am so glad
I
you
will
called in.
certainly continue to explore.
Certainly do. And don't forget to not only think about things, but to act on them when something feels right. Okay? Act on them when something feels
Absolutely.
right. Take action. And you know, I think a lot of people fool themselves and say, I don't know what action to take, but all you have to do is take some action. Doors open and close, classes make and classes don't make. It tells you where you need to be at the time. So just start moving, you know. We've got to change your mind about dear you, and you are quite dear. I like you a lot.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
I think I'm going to go out and celebrate my birthday.
Well, I think that you should have the biggest celebration in the world today. I do. I hope that today, in this discussion, even though you might not understand it fully, is a good place to start. So, go have fun in that
Absolutely.
gorgeous state that you're in. Okay?
All right.
All right, dear.
Have a luscious day.
Well, have a luscious day, you too, and happy birthday. Jeff, let me know how you're doing. I do have, I'm going to give you all my email, which is theburgessprocess@yahoo.com, the Burgess, BURGESS, process@yahoo.com. You can write me also through the website, which is Martha Burgess Novak, NOVAK.net. And please get on that website. We also have, hello Billy, so glad that you're with us today. We also have a list on that website of some marvelous people that I've trained to do this work. So either if you feel like that I'm your coach, I'm delighted. If you feel like someone else is, I'm delighted. We don't have any egos about that here. We just try to help. Okay? All right. So the lines are open. I'm going to go back to our discussion of celebration. When we are burdened with the issues from our past and some false ideas about ourselves, we are far from wanting to celebrate. And I understand that. I've been on this path for a really long time. We are in that energy of lack. We are not sustained. We don't have that deep belief inside of us of knowing how it all works and that we are responsible for ourselves and for our own happiness. We are not proactively working the moment. If we are dependent on another, our moods, our relationships, who we are, goes with how they're feeling, you see. So where is our own lives in this? For those of you who are new to me, I do so encourage you, and Jeff, I encourage you to go and listen to the archive shows on Blog Talk Radio. There's a whole series on relationships. But there are a whole series on everything. Everything is on Blog Talk Radio, Facebook Live. There are a lot of archive shows. And no show stands alone. It's all connected in this marvelous web called energy. So, I want to say, and I touched on this earlier, but I want to put it in uncertain terms. The way to God is to accept yourself. Not to talk about accepting yourself or to think you're accepting yourself, but to truly accept yourself. To realize that you're the energies of everything, light and dark. We all like to hear the good things about us. We don't like to hear the bad things about us, by the way. And there are no good and bad in the child's way, but I'm using that language because that's the way the egoic child's mind sees itself. Only when we accept all of us and accept our lives as a whole, and that takes a little while of work on yourself, only then do we have a choice about what we really want to be. And then you'll really feel like celebrating. Along the way, as you are working on yourself, working on your awareness, and you remember that enlightenment is achieved through a triad of awareness, it leads to consciousness, it leads to enlightenment. That's the path. And so along the way of this, if that's the path, you've got to learn how to celebrate. There are big public celebrations like Thanksgiving and Christmas, Hanukkah, and more in every culture. These are certainly wonderful. And they do a lot to foster our sense of community, unless we rebel against them. But when you approach them in the right spirit, they certainly will do that. But the real magic in these public celebrations is the very private way we go about celebrating them. What do they mean to you? We'll all have different ideas about this, and that's okay. I mean, it's our differences that make the world diverse and special, that keeps us learning and growing. But not to consider what public celebrations mean to you is well, it becomes not a celebration anymore. It becomes a rote activity. And rote activities don't really have a lot of punch to them. They don't give us anything back. It's just something rote to do. Or they become a time of overcompensation because we really feel empty underneath and we are not participating in the community at all, but keeping ourselves separate. I'd like to suggest that even public celebrations, like we're talking about, have their real meaning in the quiet, private moments we give them. I can give you an example of this in my own life. I remember when I was a kid, Thanksgiving was just a time to go and eat. It meant nothing to me. It's interesting because these days that's just about my favorite holiday. It is a time to reflect on all the things in my life that I am really grateful for. Now, the interesting thing is, it's about what I'm grateful for. It's not about what my family is grateful for. It's not about what the person down the street is grateful for. It's a private time of my gratitude. It's me connecting with me. Now, in my opinion, I do think there's so much to be celebrated in this life. The public moments are wonderful, but as I said, it's these small, quiet celebrations within us that, to me, have for us the most meaning. Something stuck in my memory from long, long ago was an old Merv Griffin show. He had Zsa Zsa Gabor on as a guest. Now, I was a kid when I saw this show. She sported a huge diamond ring, and Merv Griffin asked her if one of her husbands, I think she had many, gave her that ring, right? And she said, and I'm probably paraphrasing, but I remember it like this: "Oh no, I gave it to myself. The best presents I give to myself." I think sometimes that these things stick in our consciousness, not because of what they mean to us at the time, but of what they're going to mean to us one day. And I want to say that I see that remark quite differently than one day, or the day I heard it. I think the best presents we can receive, we give to ourselves, because nobody knows you like you. I'm not talking about material things, as you well know by now, you know me. These meaningful, small, quiet celebrations within ourselves do, though, have a foundation. You know what that foundation is? Awareness. Awareness of ourselves. Awareness of who we are on an authentic level. You must be aware that there is something to celebrate. And that comes from being aware of who you are and why you're reacting the way you are. So, the mindset of lack, of our not being enough, gets in our way. There's nothing to celebrate there in lack, except maybe the fact that it's a void and the universe fills all voids and there's no such thing as lack, therefore. It's a mindset that we must change. And can we change it? Absolutely. To me, that's a big thing to celebrate. We have to make our peace with the past. We have to start realizing that there's nothing to fear, as the saying goes, but fear itself. When you start seeing something different than what the child's mind gives you, there are many things to celebrate. You're beginning to open your mind to the fullness of God, and again, God presents two ways here's the rub, according to our understanding. Our understanding in the child's mind is lack. Our understanding in the higher self's mind, fullness. Let's talk about some tips that will help you be aware of how to start seeing celebration in your life right now. Shall we? I think that's really good. You're going to see more, of course, as time passes and more of you evolves and you come out of the child's mind more and more and more when you confront old issues and limitations and accept your humanness and realize it's all right. That's just a great place to start, to know all about God. The interesting thing to me is that this world, the esoteric journey, is about things are in things that you wouldn't expect. For example, your divinity is going to be found in your humanness. Joy is going to be found in grief. Gratitude will be found there too. Nothing is what it seems in this life, and that's the esoteric journey. So let's talk about some tips that will help you celebrate a little more. You might want to write some of these down, that if any of them mean anything to you. I hope they will. Celebrations remind you to be grateful for things that you take for granted. I think that's the importance of public celebrations. In our day-to-day lives, sometimes we forget to be grateful for what we've got. So here comes Thanksgiving, but how much richer and more enjoyable would your life be if you were grateful every day? We take for granted God, family, accomplishments, ourselves, and much more. And mindfulness, that you hear so much about, is staying conscious of these wonderful things as your life is unfolding every minute. But one doesn't just turn on mindfulness like you're flipping on a light switch. It takes work. It takes awareness to get conscious enough to be, if you go far enough, enlightened. Number 2 tip. Celebrations are powerful because they make us slow down. This is good, slowing down. You may not think so, but actually, in this case, it is a very good. Celebrations are a healthy distraction, not an unhealthy one, like drugs, alcohol, giving too much time at work, extramarital affairs, and all the other things we can be distracted by, porn, losing ourselves in a book at the expense of our lives, and many other things. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about in terms of the good point of celebration slowing us down. You know how when you were in school and you had to study for a test, you determined, I'm going to cram for this test. You know what? You weren't very successful cramming for the test. The reason is our bodies aren't geared to cram like that. They're not geared to stay on one thing. The greatest artists know that it's about writing or doing whatever you're doing, painting, and then actually moving away from the activity, doing something else, going to get something to eat, calling a friend, going back to your work. Your work is made better by a healthy distraction that frees up the subconscious mind. So celebrations actually make us slow down. They make us have a different perspective on things if we're approaching them correctly and with the right dear attitude. So they make our work better. Number 3, celebrations have at their core a word I used before, gratitude. Gratitude gives you the feeling that you're not alone. And because I want you to know, I think I want to say this, because I want you to know that you aren't alone. That is a misperception you had from the egoic child's mind, that we're all alone. We never are. God's right there. And all our guides and friends, physically and in spirit, are around us. That you are alone is propaganda from the egoic child's mind. It's designed to promote fear. It's designed to stop you from moving mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. The egoic child's mind is in charge of making sense of your world so it can keep you alive. That's the only thing it's for, to keep you alive by making sense of your world in a child's mind way. It makes sense of your world based on the appearances that we talked about. We are designed to grow past this mindset that never brings us real happiness, you see? And we're not grateful. We're just enduring and surviving. You've got to see something more to be really, sincerely, and sustainably grateful. Another tip is that celebrations foster connection with other people. This is why you must celebrate. We can't wait for someone else to plan the celebration or wait for others to celebrate us. That's just narcissism, isn't it? But many people are doing that. We must find our own value within ourselves because it's the right thing to do. We must give ourselves our own pats on the back that are realistic and accurate and true, and a lovely step along the way. And we have to create wonderful lives for ourselves by finding new and creative things to do and to learn. In other words, we have to keep growing. It's wonderful to share this with others, but you must find it within you as much or more as you share this with others. You must know how to do this. It's part of being the mature mind. This has occurred to me several times with both our callers, so I want to put this on the table. There was a study done. It was within the last 5 years, and I refer to it in my book, The Life You Want. So if you want to read more about this study, please get that book on my website. But they did a study on what creates long, happy partnerships. And the results was surprising. And it was only one thing more than anything else. And they called it, these scientists called it novelty. What novelty is you're learning something that you are interested in and you're sharing it with your partner, so that both of you grow and change and grow deeper and share the intimacy. You see? That's intimacy. That's as much intimacy as taking off your clothes and having sex with somebody. This is intimacy. Do you share knowledge? Do you grow in the knowledge? Are you keeping it growing? Are you keeping this relationship deepening and growing? I think that's incredible information to have. We can't stop learning and have happy marriages. We can't stop growing. We can't find a partner that isn't growing as much as we're not growing. We have to do the opposite, don't we? Number 5, you have to be creative and be willing to create to celebrate well. You can't wait. You can't say, I'll do it someday when this happens or that happens. You can't ride on somebody else's exciting life. You have to create your own. You must contribute. or you are not a contributor. And you're not going to be happy if you're not a contributor. This is intrinsic to the highest self. This is why one feels useless when one isn't contributing. This is, they know they're not contributing in this way. They're not doing more for themselves. They're not learning and growing. They're not ready to give something to someone else. So it's really important to start doing that. We're going to tell you how to do that in just a minute. Number 6, celebration focuses you, we've mentioned this, on what you have, not what you don't have. And that's what most people focus on, what you don't have. And you'll learn in the Life You Want book that what you put your energy into is what you get back. It's the way you communicate with the universe, you see. They give you more of what you focus on. Number 7. If you can find in you these small, wonderful, and large, by the way, wonderful celebrations, it makes you an optimist. An optimist is just someone who expects a good result. A pessimist is someone who expects a lousy result. So you've got to remove these egoic child's mindsets that anticipate the negative, because they limit you. They can be removed because all they are is energy. And your behavior changes when you've changed your energy, you see. And that's how you become more positive. Number 8. Celebration gives you something to look forward to. Depressed people don't often give themselves anything to look forward to, because they live by rote. They think the same thoughts, they feel the same things, they do the same things, they spiritually believe the same things, if they believe anything at all. By the way, a belief in nothing is a belief in something. Can't get away from it. It's too easy to make excuses like, I don't have the money to explore this or that, I don't feel like it. Depression, I think of, is a blanket that has been put over a table of all sorts of wonderful things you might genuinely be interested in picking up and exploring if the blanket wasn't there. So the blanket is there if you're depressed. So what do? You just start picking up things and getting as much out of it as you can, because the sheer act of doing something different, picking something up instead of looking at the blanket and said, I can't have anything, is going to help. You see, we've got to get you out of the rut. Movement, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, gets you out of the rut. So I recommend 2 things if you find yourself in a depression, which is, for God's sake, work on yourself to challenge some of these childhood issues based on appearances that are not serving you and are not beliefs of your highest self. We've got to get the egoic beliefs resolved so you can have beliefs of their highest self. And I think of this, and you've heard me make this announcement before, which is, a pronouncement before, which is, it's like a garden. You can't just let anything grow in that garden. You got a lot of weeds going in there that shouldn't belong to the most wonderful things that do belong in the highest self. The awe of how this system works, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, unconditional love, and more. Forgiveness. There's so much more that can grow there, and grow there successfully, if we address the weeds, right? These old issues from our past, these things that aren't true, except in the egoic child's mind. There is absolute glory in knowing the truth. But the truth has got to be revealed over a period of time of your challenging some of these old beliefs, of you even being aware of them. Now, so let's go back to saying what many people say to me that come to me in depression. They say, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I like anymore. I don't like anything. I don't care about anything. That apathy is a depression. So here's what I recommend. What did you like to do? What did you like to see? What even subjects were you interested in, whether you explored them or not when you were young, before the depression really set in and had a hold on you? What did you like? That's what I would investigate. That's where I would start. Start over. Start again. In my opinion, there is glory in that. You may not see that in the beginning, but you'll look back and you'll say, yeah, that was the right move. I needed to do that. Start again. Be brave enough to start again. Number 9, do step out of your routine. Have even a special place to celebrate, a beautiful spot. Create a lovely room, a lovely corner. Go to the lake. Go someplace lovely. Go to church. Go someplace special for you. And take the time to thank you and God and the oneness of this. Take time and energy to celebrate. It requires time and it requires energy. And another thing that I think really helps it is a ritual of some sort. A ritual, a toast is a ritual. A prayer is a ritual. A talk with a trusted other about this moment is a ritual. Any of these things are the time you take to make this a special moment for you. And if it's a special moment, it's a good part of celebration. Be aware of what God is telling you within and without, because information comes from everywhere. It comes from God within us. It comes from what we're hearing and seeing and the input we have outside. Don't be unconscious to that. There's a lot of input from outside that you don't want to believe. So if there's a commercial on television that says you're going to get osteoporosis if you don't take calcium, that's something that I would choose not to believe. And unless you're aware, it just goes right by. And by your silence, your subconscious mind accepts it as truth. That's just the way human beings work. This is why we must be aware. And awareness is the first start of all of this. Determine, actually, to recognize ideas that come to you and to act on the good ones. Substitute unhealthy thoughts, feelings, and behaviors with healthy ones. Accept you. And know you are changing all the time. And try to now make your peace with change, because it's just the movement of a God who loves you, whether you know it or not. All of these things that I'm recommending to you create a life with joy in it, with the expression of the authenticity of you in it. And this is certainly worth celebrating. I hope you'll get moving on some of these things. You're not going to get moving on all of them. But try to adopt something that we're suggesting, or come up with something of your own. I'm not the only one with the answers. You are. But celebrate your sheer existence, it's a great place to start. That we woke up this morning, that we saw the sun or did not, that nothing is wasted, that it's all part of a path, and that the dear, great God within and without has us all. Thank you so much for listening today to this show. I'd like to do a quick prayer. I'm going to say, please visit our website too, the Martha BurgessNovak.net. We are .net, not a .com. Get on the website. Write me. Let me know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you'd like me to address. I do suggest study groups with your friends, your like-minded friends, that is based on some of these marvelous lessons that we're trying to put forth to you, channel. I wish for you a very, very good life. We have our own app now based on my second book. It's an oracle, and it's very meditative and marvelous. It's called the Teacup Prophecies. You can find it for your iPhone. It is only for iPhone. We'll have our Droid one come in a few months. And the app is only 99 cents at the App Store for your iPhone. All right, let's do a prayer. Dear God, we thank you so much for this day, for all the blessings, the wonderful callers that called in today, the things to think about, the things to act on. We open ourselves now to what you would have us do, that we can incorporate in our lives, that we can celebrate. Show us what we have not seen before, and that you are...
90 seconds.
Thank you, Blog Talk Radio, that you are right there in the middle of it all. We now open ourselves to change and growth in the opportunity therein. Thank you so much, dear God, for all of this and for all of our precious listeners. We now surrender what we can of any of the things that confronted us today. And we celebrate the fact that we are here and listening.
60 seconds.
And that everything is moving and changing, and that you are all of it. We are safe in that. We thank you, dear God, and say this in your name, in the name of all the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, in the name of each and every one of you listening to the show today. We thank you so much. I want all of you to have a great week. We'll be back next week with another show, 10 o'clock on Sundays, and please do listen to our archive shows on Blog Talk Radio and Facebook Live. Bye-bye.